that our communities are able to welcome and support them.
Bambos Charalambous.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the 65th year anniversary of the signing of the European Convention on Human Rights, and one of the fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 8 and enshrined in UK law is the right to family life. The actual wording is, everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. In addition, my honourable friend for Stretford-on-Ermston has already mentioned the UN Convention for the Rights of the Child. Unfortunately, the UK is out of sync with its own law by not applying the right to family life to refugee children. We've already heard about what my honourable friend, the member for Nahilan and La's bill seeks to do, which is to amend the law so that child refugees are allowed to have exactly the same rights as adult refugees. They be allowed legal aid to be able to make their application, and I support my honourable friend's bill.
Thank you.
I want to emphasise that this only applies to children who have been processed in a lawfully acquired refugee status and therefore have the legal right to be in this country. I'm sure that anybody with children of school age probably still worries a little when their children go on a school trip, even if it's only for a day. So imagine those same children having to flee their home, having had to witness the ravages and horrors of war, having to make dangerous journeys over thousands of miles, alone, having left their family behind. It's not something that any parent would wish on any child, let alone their own. And then imagine that having made that journey and reaching a safe haven, that child could then not be reunited with his or her parents or siblings. And imagine the mental health trauma that child would have gone through and having to go through that alone. It is actually an inhumane way to treat any child to prevent them from having access to their family. There is also an EU directive on family reunion which has been adopted by 25 out of the 27 EU members. Article 10 of the directive specifies that unaccompanied child refugees are entitled to be reunited with their family members. Of the other two countries that chose not to opt in, Ireland have introduced their own domestic law right to allow child refugees to be sponsors for the family members to join them. And only Denmark and the United Kingdom are out of step with the rest of the European Union. I'll give way to my friend.
Does my honourable friend share my concern that when the Prime Minister says Brexit means Brexit, this is what she means, that children will not be able to be reunited with their families, refugee children? And does not our international reputation potentially suffer the same way the United States, America has this week, if we adopt these exact policies?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. He's quite right with the uncertainty about what's going to happen post-Brexit. We cannot be sure of anything, and these issues need to be spelt out and confirmed as soon as possible. Why would anyone want to deprive these child refugees of the right to be with their parents and family? These are vulnerable children, some suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, dealing with the bureaucracy of being a refugee, having difficulty accessing support in a culturally different environment, and now lacking the support network of their family. Why heap this unnecessary cruelty on a child when it's obvious that a child refugee will do so much better in all areas with the support of their family? The UK has already failed in its promise to accept 480 children from the Calais camp, which is shameful, and it's only thanks to the phenomenal work of charities such as Help Refugees that some of the Calais children living in the woods are alive today. And I hope that honourable members at least have the humanity to do the right thing by supporting the children who are already here. Having looked at the first part of my honourable friends, the member for Nahilan and La's bill, I will now focus on the second area, and that is the area of legal aid. Legal aid was made unavailable for refugee family reunion cases following the passing of the Legal Aid, Sentencing and Punishment of Offenders Act 2012. It's difficult enough for adults to navigate the myriad of complex legal procedures and forms that need to be completed. With family reunion applications, there is an additional requirement for family members having to attend the closest British embassy, which will necessarily mean travelling through conflict zones. In some cases, there will be the need for DNA tests to be done, and documentation gathering is also a necessary part of applications. The British Red Cross have highlighted the complexities of applying for family reunion in their report, Not So Straightforward. As child refugees have no other way of accessing legal support they need because of the bureaucracy created by the government, it's only right that they should have access to legal aid to help navigate this. If the government wants to make the cost of this bill less, then perhaps they should look at making the process of family reunion easier and therefore cheaper. Since the Legal Aid Sentencing and Punishment Offenders Act came into effect in 2013, there's been a cut of over £600 million in the legal aid budget, which is over and above the savings the Treasury were demanding of the Ministry of Justice. The Act is due to be reviewed this year, although I'm not aware as to how much progress has been made on that front, but this bill gives a perfect opportunity for the Ministry of Justice to examine the impact of the legal aid cuts, particularly in the field of family reunion, and to put some money back where it's needed. Give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. A few weeks ago, I spent a few days in Djibouti, in Africa, and I saw wave after wave of young, predominantly men, on the march. They were walking away from the refugee camp that was set up, that we visited. And the reason they were leaving there is because there's no secondary school. Now, we all know that the overseas aid budget causes some controversy, and I support it. But would he agree with me that if there is a finite amount, then we're better off actually setting up a secondary school rather than actually trying to stretch the pounds over here, which actually in the end deprive some of the opportunities that I've just referenced that we could be funding more for abroad?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. He's right about refugee camps needing more support and provision of education. Many people spend years and years in refugee camps and their education suffers. However, we want to actually tackle the cause of this, and the cause of the reason why people are in refugee camps is war. And unless more done is to stop war and stop conflict, then these refugee camps will continue to exist and more asylum and more refugees will occur. There would no doubt be critics who will say that this will open the floodgates and more people traffickers will exploit young people, more migrants will want to come to the UK. But I want to remind honourable members that countries neighbouring Syria, such as Jordan and Turkey, have taken in millions of Syrian refugees, and across Europe in 2017, Germany, Italy and France received at least twice as many asylum applications as the UK. The UK received a total of less than 3% of all asylum claims made in the EU last year. I also should remind honourable members that in 2017, 3,119 people lost their lives in their desperate attempts to cross the Mediterranean to claim asylum. And even for those who do make it to the UK, the asylum system here is extremely tough, with only 29% of the initial asylum applications being made in the UK being successful, and only 35% of appeals being successful also. To give you an idea of the numbers that my honourable friend's bill will help, last year only 794 children arrived in the UK as unaccompanied children were granted asylum. This bill seeks to help those 794 children, which is actually less than the number of peers in the other place, and to allow them to be reunited with their families.
Fantastic point.
Not allowing child refugees to be reunited with their family members is morally wrong, legally wrong and inhumane. And I invite all members to support my honourable friend's bill, and I encourage the government to bring forward a money resolution so that we can allow this bill to progress and that children be reunited with their families.
Joanna Cherry.